Day 1 of rain is fine. Day 2 is annoying. Day 3, everything you own is wet, and it is not going to dry, because there is nowhere dry to put it. Day 5, your fire is dead, not low, dead, and it will not relight, because every scrap of wood in the entire landscape is soaked through. Day 7, the food you stored has gone moldy, the ground is churned to mud, and you can't leave, because leaving means walking through open country while you're already wet and cold and haven't eaten properly in 3 days. Nobody tells this story. We tell the Ice Age story, the Predator story, the Famine story. Rain doesn't sound like a threat. It sounds like weather. But here's the thing that should reframe this entirely. Wet will kill you faster than cold will. Water pulls heat out of a body far faster than air at the same temperature, dramatically faster, which produces a fact that sounds wrong. A person soaked through at 10 degrees can be in more trouble than a person dry at -5. 10 degrees is a mild spring day. You'd walk to the shop in it, soaked, in wind, with no way to get dry. That same mild day starts killing you. And unlike the cold, you can't solve it by trying harder. Shivering makes heat, but wet clothing and wet hide take it away faster than you can produce it. You are pouring water into a bucket with the bottom cut off, so the naked ape's real enemy was never really the frost. It was damp. Let's start with what actually goes wrong, in order, because it's a cascade rather than one problem. Fire dies first, and fire was everything. Everything we talked about with winters. Fire is a portable piece of the tropics, the thing that let a tropical animal exist in a cold place. All of that depends on dry fuel. Sustained rain removes dry fuel from the entire landscape, not makes it harder. Removes it, which means no warmth, no drying, no cooking, no light, and no protection at night. Every single function of the fire fails simultaneously, and it fails at the exact moment you need all of them most. Then the food goes. Damp is how food spoils. Meat that would keep for weeks in cold, dry air goes over in days when it's warm and wet. Stored plants mold. And in that same weather, you can't dry new meat, can't smoke it without fire, can't preserve anything you catch. So the stores rot at the same time, the ability to replace them disappears. Then hunting collapses. Tracking is harder. Scent is washed out. Animals shelter and go quiet. Your bowstring, if you're late enough to have one, goes slack. Glue softens, wooden shafts warp, then movement stops. Ground turns to mud, rivers rise. Crossings that were fine last week are now lethal. The obvious answer, leave, go somewhere better, is exactly what you can't do. So 4 systems fail at once, each making the others worse. That's what endless rain actually meant. So what did they do? The first answer is the boring one, and it's the right one. They were already somewhere else. This is the thing that separates people who lived through it from people who didn't. Hunter-gatherers didn't wait for the rain to arrive and then react. They knew it was coming because they'd lived the same year, in the same place, their entire lives, and so had their parents. The seasonal round wasn't a survival tactic. It was the shape of life. So before the wet season, you move to where the wet season is survivable. Higher ground away from flooding, near rock shelters, where the food doesn't disappear when it pours. You don't out-tough the rain. You arrange your entire year so you're never standing in the open when it starts. That's the actual answer to a lot of how did they survive X questions, and it's unglamorous. They planned, in a way we'd find difficult, not weeks ahead, decades of accumulated knowledge about what a landscape does in every month of the year, held in the heads of the oldest people in the group. And here's a place where I want to be careful, because it's an easy thing to overclaim. We don't have neat archaeological evidence of rainy season shelters the way we have mammoth bone huts. Organic shelter, branches, bark, hide, thatch, rots. It leaves almost nothing, so we're reasoning from what we know of recent hunter-gatherer societies, from cave use, and from what physics demands. That's decent evidence. It isn't a dig site. What we do have is caves and rock shelters, and the picture is consistent, repeated layered occupation, over and over for thousands of years. Some sites show a rhythm of return, generation after generation, and the reason isn't hard to guess. A rock overhang solves the single hardest problem in wet weather. It gives you dry ground and a dry supply of fuel to keep the fire alive, which brings us to the trick that actually matters, and it's the one people never think of. They didn't relight fires, they carried them. Think about what a fire really is once you understand rain. It isn't a convenience. It's a fragile thing that, if it goes out at the wrong moment, might not come back for a week. Starting a fire in the wet with wet materials without matches is somewhere between very hard and impossible. So you don't let it go out. Embers get carried, packed in something that keeps them smoldering, moved from camp to camp, nursed through bad weather. The fire becomes continuous. It isn't lit each night. It's maintained, sometimes for very long stretches, handed forward like an object. That reframes the whole thing. The fire isn't a tool you use. It's more like a member of the group, something that has to be fed, sheltered, and kept alive. And if it dies in the wrong week, people die with it. And the second half of the answer is the one that connects straight back to you. Shelter and staying dry is one of the oldest technologies we have, and almost none of it survives. Every wet weather solution is made of the stuff that rots: bark, branches, thatch, hide, woven grass, which means an entire vast tradition of human ingenuity. Everything people worked out about staying dry over hundreds of thousands of years is essentially invisible in the archaeological record. We know it existed because they're not dead. That's the evidence. What we can say is what the physics demands, and every recent society solves it the same way. Get off the wet ground, get a sloped roof over you, and let the smoke out without letting the rain in. Now, the part that makes this more interesting than a survival checklist: rain didn't just threaten people, it shaped them. Sitting out a wet season is an enormous amount of enforced time indoors, in a small group, with nothing that must be done. And the same is true of a long night or a cold snap. Those trapped hours are not empty. They're when you fix things, make things, teach children, argue, and talk. There's a decent case that a lot of what we think of as culture, the long stories, the detailed craft, the accumulated technique, grew in exactly those forced-together hours when the weather said no. Not despite the bad weather, because of it. A group with nothing urgent to do and nowhere to go will, given enough centuries, invent an enormous amount of stuff. The rain built the roof, and then the roof built the culture underneath it. And there's one more layer, which is the biggest, and it goes far beyond one bad week. Rain isn't only a nuisance at the scale of a season. At the scale of thousands of years, it is the story. Green Sahara, dry Sahara, lakes that appear and vanish, rivers that make a region livable and then don't. Human populations across our history expanded when the rains were good and contracted when they weren't. Routes across continents opening when a corridor greened and closing when it dried. The distribution of the human species is, to a real extent, a map of where the water fell, not where it was warm, where it rained, which brings it home. You have never in your life been genuinely wet with no way to get dry. Think about that. Every time you've been soaked, there has been, within an hour or two, a towel, a change of clothes, a warm room. The situation resolves. That guarantee is so complete you've never once had to think about it. Take it away, and it becomes the most urgent problem you have. Not food, not predators. Getting dry before your body loses the argument. And notice what your instincts still do. The relief of getting inside when it's hammering down. The specific, disproportionate comfort of being warm and dry while you can hear rain on the roof. A feeling so reliable that people play recordings of it to fall asleep. The pleasure isn't the rain, it's the shelter, being enjoyed with the rain as proof it's working. That's an extremely old feeling. It's the feeling of having solved, for tonight, the thing that used to kill people. Somewhere behind it is a very long line of ancestors, listening to exactly the same sound from under an overhang, next to a fire someone had carried for a week, thinking, not tonight. We beat the cold with a needle. We beat the rain with a roof. And then we stayed under it and became the kind of animal that tells stories.